Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Another happy landing.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh, and today it's just going to be us chatting about J.J. Abrams on the making of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. It's an interview he did with Popcorn at ABC News, and I thought there was some very enlightening things in that interview that was worthy to chat about, something I didn't need to chat about with a co-host this week. It's a bit of a special episode here. And some great comments that he had to make about his latest film, Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. So aside from that, there is an additional piece of news that I found where the Rolling Stone took Chris Terrio and chatted with him about his job on the latest film in the writer's chair, because he actually helped J.J. Abrams write this film. And I feel like any news on Chris Terrio has gone very under the radar, and he's he's an interesting guy. Chris Terrio, he's had credits through various films, and some of his credits include, I believe it was Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and a few others, and Argo. J.J. Abrams brought him on for The Rise of Skywalker due to his amazing work on Argo. JJ was a huge fan of that, and thought that Chris was perfect for the job. Chris has also worked on Justice League as a writer for that, and Part 2, which never ended up getting made. But he's a talented writer, and I'm not the biggest DC Universe fan when it comes to the newer films. I love Smallville, and I love Superman Returns, and I didn't think the Green Lantern movie was actually that bad, but that's just me. And Chris Terrier's got some big names under his belt, and J.J. Abrams took him on for the job. So any news coming out of his mouth has been very much flying under the radar. It hasn't been covered as much. A lot of people have been watching the interviews with Daisy Ridley and John Boyega and such, and big news about the missing script and whatnot, if you've been following all that. But it's getting closer to the film, and we're on the 11th hour, and J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio are coming out saying a few things which are worthy to chat about, and I wanted to commentate on some of this stuff. So without further ado, let's play this interview that I found online. If you have not seen it already, you can listen to it right here. I'll be playing it on the show, and then pausing it at certain moments just to commentate. So let me hit the play button for you.
Hi everybody, it's Peter Travers at Popcorn, where we tell you what's happening at the movies, and as far as I'm concerned, there is no other movie now except for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Is there another movie?
There probably are other movies.
There are, but no, you don't know of any. Come on. This is my guest, J.J. Abrams, who has directed Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes, sir.
This has to be the most pressure that's ever been placed upon your head. This is not only the last of the recent trilogy, but the end of the 9-movie cycle.
Yeah.
Do you know what those guys that are behind Game of Thrones had to suffer through? Where everybody said, you can't end it that way.
I know. Well, you're not going to please everyone.
Well, that's just a given.
That is a given.
But the people that watch a Star Wars movie, I don't know, they're an army. They can
They
march
are.
on you, JJ.
Yeah, but you can't look at fans of Star Wars as an adversary. You have to sort of, they're passionate and certainly can be contentious. But the fact that they care, I feel like I, as a Star Wars fan, understand that love for the series. So, I feel blessed to be involved in something that matters so much to so many people.
Well,
I think what JJ is saying is very close to what we've heard Rian Johnson say after he got so much feedback for The Last Jedi. And it's tough to say if this is actually the way they feel or if it's something maybe that's been told to them to say as they represent the company, Lucasfilm and Disney, of course. So yeah, no, it's a tough question to answer when they're talking about Star Wars fans, especially in recent history, with so many people being very outspoken towards their dislike for what Disney's been doing with Star Wars and such. So yeah, it's a sensitive topic for JJ to answer any questions about here.
It does.
Yeah.
Did it always matter to you? What were you, 10 or 11?
Yeah, it was 10.
When New Hope, look at that.
Yeah, it was 10. And it was obviously mind expanding and immediately something that just you knew that things had changed. When that movie. How did you feel when you first saw it?
I did. I thought it was a game changer,
Yeah.
but I was too into it. It was like one of those things where if you're watching a movie and you're going to write about it or
Yeah.
do something, you take notes. But when a movie's really working, you don't take the notes. You go see it another time
I
if you
see.
want to write about it.
I
It's
see.
it's basically, whoa, what is this?
Yes. Well, it had such an impact, obviously, on audiences, on filmmakers, and not just the technology of it, but the sort of world expanding nature of it, the sense of opportunity and possibility. And it's this thing that for me, as a filmmaker, I felt very lucky to get to be involved in it. On this one, I kind of went into it with a different point of view, having done one already. It was such a challenge. The ambition of it was so enormous, not just because it was another Star Wars movie, but because it was the end of not 3 movies, but 9.
9.
And that was really the thing that I thought, this makes me really uncomfortable, and so that was sort of the reason to do it in a way, was to sort of finish what we had started with this trilogy, but to take this on in a way that endings do not come easily.
It brings me back. What he's saying here, it brings me back to the interview that JJ gave when he did The Force Awakens, and the overwhelming thought of taking on the task of making a Star Wars movie. And Kathleen Kennedy said that the only reason why one of the reasons that convinced him to do it was to answer the question that she posed is, who is Luke Skywalker? And part of the reason why because I watched that interview long before I saw The Force Awakens. And part of the reason why I felt so empty after I walked out of The Force Awakens was because JJ failed to answer that question. And I think in the rewrites, I think their entire direction changed, I'm trying to remember whether or not this interview came out when they were going off of George Lucas's outline for the sequels or not. But when JJ came in and when things turned around, the entire purpose of him coming on to direct this movie, which was supposed to answer the question of who is Luke Skywalker, ended up getting flushed down the toilet. So it really is something that resonates in similarity with what he's saying here about the task of creating a film to end all films, and how that was reason to do it. It makes me wonder if whether or not we're going to walk out of that movie feeling like it was a conclusion or not, based on the fact that he has had interviews before set out to fulfill a certain thing and ended up not fulfilling it at all. So will this be a real conclusion that feels like a conclusion, or will it just be a movie that very much concludes a trilogy and less so concludes what we know as the Skywalker saga. So we'll have to find that out later this week when we all go see the film.
Do you stay away from it while you're actually shooting a movie?
Stay away from what?
Stay away from the internet, stay away from what people, because they're always saying, well, how could he do that? We heard
Here's
that
how
this
I feel.
is happening.
Every time I read something where someone is unsupportive, which is a kind way of saying brutal, I kind of go, oh, like they've got a point. And whenever I read someone saying, oh, he's the greatest, and I'm like, they don't know what they're talking about. Like I always feel like I sympathize with the people who have the sort of more negative things to say. So it's not a pleasant thing to ever read something that's negative, but I also feel like, spirited debate is not a bad thing, and certainly you can find some of that online.
We all have questions. You're not going to answer any of them right now.
Right this minute?
But the fact is,
Not with the cameras on.
Not with the
Yeah.
cameras on. But when you
can't.
look at,
Yeah.
I see this coming, and it's the end, and I say, Daisy Ridley is playing Rey, and I don't know who her parents are. Am I going to find out? Is this movie going to reveal certain things that I need to know? Because who's your daddy is like a major question through all 9.
Oh, I thought you were just talking to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, you too.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, well, here's what I would say, that this movie, as an ending, needed to have answers, like must have answers. Do
you answer all the questions we have?
I don't.
J.J. Abrams.
I didn't get the list in advance.
Too bad.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All of them answered. No, I think that we knew going in that we had to make this feel conclusive. It had to be. It had to come to an end. And yet, there are certain things that I feel. Here's the way I feel about Star Wars.
Good. This is going to be the thing.
And it's the reason that I loved the original trilogy so much. And the reason I loved the original trilogy more than the prequel trilogy for me, which was that the original trilogy posed great questions and allowed you to, infer the answer. It allowed you to do the math on your own. And the prequel trilogy, which I love for a lot of reasons, but it's not as much my favorite as the original, is that it answered a lot of questions. Now, I'm not someone who needs to know about midichlorians. I don't need to understand.
I don't understand the midichlorians.
Well, but I'm just saying that that's not doesn't feel like it's a thing for me. That's not to say, however, in this movie we didn't adhere to the 8 films that preceded us and tell an ending that embraces all of it. I didn't go against that stuff because I don't didn't like it as much. But my point is that there's something about answers. You need answers, but I don't think demystifying everything is necessarily the key to a successful story. I mean, I'm sure some of your favorite films allow some things to the imagination, yes?
Ambiguity.
JJ has always been very clear that the original trilogy is what inspired him. And, in all rightness, I mean, he is a part of the generation of fans who grew up with those films and the reason why they became a Star Wars fan. And it's probably a large reason of what he does today. So, it's in all positivity that he is a fan of Star Wars, whether it's a prequel or original trilogy or whatever. He's that talk though about midichlorians. He's brought it up before when he was in a previous interview and he talked about his meeting with George Lucas and Chris Terrio before he started writing the film. And George did talk about midichlorians. He brought them up, and JJ does say, George loves his midichlorians, and I don't think we'll get a mention of them in the film, but in all fairness, they are part of the Star Wars canon. The prequels are part of the Star Wars canon, and the prequels came out of George's head just like the original trilogy did. And I think, as far as 3 films go, a lot of fans in his generation, that's to say JJ's generation of fandom, they've been displeased with the prequels because they claim that they demystify a lot of what happened and what was talked about in the original trilogy. And it's not for me growing up, I mean, I came in to the fandom at a time where we didn't have episodes 2 and 3. Episode 1 had just been released in theaters, and there was a large part of the story that was missing still. But growing up, I never thought that the magic was gone. I've always been one to soak up answers. Anything that Star Wars has come out with, I've just been soaking it up like a sponge, and I've never been able to relate to the fans that have ever felt like the midichlorians have demystified the Force, because yes, there is a lot of science to them, but no, it doesn't change how the Force works. And when Finn says to Han Solo in The Force Awakens, we'll use the Force, and he gets all excited about it, and then Han Solo basically looks at him all baffled. This guy that basically doubted the Force's existence 3 episodes earlier, and he looks at Finn and goes, "That's not how the Force works." There's a clear understanding in Star Wars with people who know how the Force works. They're very aware of the fact that they can't use it. It's not a superpower. It is able to connect with Force users like Rey and Luke and Anakin and Yoda, Jedi and Sith alike. It's not a superpower. What it is, though, is this, this entity, this Force that binds the galaxy together. It's exactly what Yoda and Luke described in episodes 5 and 8. Nothing has changed. The midichlorians don't change that either. What midichlorians are, and they have a very good purpose. They are to explain why not everyone in the galaxy is running around using the Force. They're there to explain that not everyone in the galaxy is able to learn this superpower, and I think there's a very good reason for that. Like, I think there's a very good reason at the time of Luke Skywalker's existence that he is one of the few people that it does come naturally to. And it's because there is this biological connection with their body and this Force, this all-powerful force field that surrounds everything. The very limited people that can feel it there are the ones who are able to use it practically, with the abilities that it gives them. And things like premonitions and such, and force push and whatever else, force lightning. I don't expect to see Han Solo learning Sith lightning anytime soon. Midichlorians are a back burner subconscious reason for the Force to exist in the very few that the gift has been given to. And I think that goes higher up with the wills of the Force as well, and how the wills are behind everything. And this is exactly what George's version of the sequels would have been about, and we would have had answers, right? But we didn't get that version of the sequels. So, for us to get that incomplete story of what the midichlorians are there for, I think there's still a lot of negativity towards them. I am actually all for midichlorians. I think it's a great reason to have. It's kind of like the X gene in X-Men. It's like, even though it's a comic book world and a fictional universe, like so is Star Wars. It's a fictional universe. It's a fictional story. But in that universe, there is a fictional sense of law and physics that we just buy into, similar to how there is noise in space in Star Wars, and almost every single planet is habitable. It seems a little out there, but I mean, it's a fictional story. It's a space fantasy. And, this is just another one of those things that goes along with that is to just make that universe believable. And I don't think it takes any mystery away from what the Force can do. I mean, even with The Last Jedi, we had this new Force ability that Luke Force projected himself, and there's references to that in the expanded universe, of course. If you read a lot of the older books and comics, it's there. But it's something we're always being taken aback by how great and powerful the Force is in a presence of these films. And it's not to say that it doesn't affect other people at all. No way. I mean, the midichlorians exist in everybody. That Qui-Gon says, like, life could not exist without it. And so who's to say that Han Solo makes his own luck? Who's to say that it's not the Force that's just protecting him and guiding him, because the wills know that he plays a very pivotal, important role later on. I am on the side of the fence that believes that the Wills are behind a lot more than what most fans give them credit for. And I think midichlorians play a big part in that. So yeah, I did talk about this on the 7 most debatable topics episode that we had a while back, but let's get in on with the interview.
Ambiguity?
Don't you think?
There's
It's like-
nothing
it's the
wrong
key.
with a little ambiguity.
That's what I think.
Because that's what you take home with you.
That's
and you
it.
talk to your friends
That's
about.
exactly it.
And you
That's
say,
it.
Yeah, okay,
So
I'm
that's-
going to argue. Maybe
Right.
I'm right, maybe you think you're right,
That's
but
it.
you're wrong.
That's it.
And you call it spirited. Sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes people just say, how could you be so stupid? That isn't true. This
Online,
isn't what
never.
happened."
No.
No, they
They're
never
so
do that.
kind.
They're so kind.
They're just nice. They're nice
that's
people.
never true.
No, but I feel like that interpretability on certain subjects is like the reason that one of the reasons that we still talk about 2001. It's like that was not a clear-cut ending, and the reason that it's so
Still
fascinating.
isn't. You could see it a dozen
That's
times.
it. But we have this conversation because not everything was given to us. Having said that, we knew that this is, it's a film for families. This is not meant to be something that people are supposed to leave feeling like they didn't understand it. And yet we wanted to make sure that people felt like not everything was demystified.
And it isn't. But what we have when you take this to a conclusion, what we have in the original universe, which you basically handled in The Force Awakens, is we've lost almost everybody except Princess Leia, who we did lose in terms of Carrie Fisher.
That's right.
So you've used some footage that existed before to have
it was crazy when we began the process and realized that we didn't want to tell the story without Leia. She's so critical to the story that we knew we wouldn't recast her. Obviously, we knew that we didn't want to do a digital Carrie Fisher because we know Carrie would have been upset with that.
Well, she would have had some things to say.
She would have. And then we realized that we did have some things that she said. We had filmed these scenes we didn't use for Force Awakens, which at the time was a nightmare because I thought, oh my God, how do we cut anything with Carrie? I hated it. There were a couple things that, she was upset we'd cut, and suddenly I realized we have this footage.
So if you've been living under a rock, sadly, Carrie Fisher died at the end of the year in 2016 in December, and it was it was heartbreaking news for a lot of fans who were fans of Carrie Fisher and the character Princess Leia. And around all that sadness, there was a question that had yet to be answered, which was how they were going to wrap up this sequel trilogy without her, because she plays such a pivotal character. She's a guidance character for people like Poe Dameron, and at the end of The Last Jedi, it's very clear that she's going to be somewhat of a mother figure to Rey as well. So yeah, this is JJ and how they are coming out with a solution. He talks about the solution that kind of presented itself when they figured out they had these unused footage from Episode 7 still lying around in the archives
that we can use and repurpose and have her not be digital, have her be, emotional and funny and scenes that are Leia. And so we wrote entire scenes around the pieces that we had. And it's uncanny.
We don't have Han Solo anymore. We
Right.
don't have Luke. And yet the movie is called The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
Which suggests a kind of new hope in it. But going in, I don't understand why.
Right.
How could this be?
You'll understand when you see it.
Okay,
You
see,
will.
that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
answer.
yeah.
I will, or maybe I won't, but I'll just come after
What
you.
if the movie has nothing to do with that? And you're like,
What are
the
they
hell is
talking
this?
about? There's no Skywalker.
Oh my God, it'd be
Yeah,
infuriating.
what is this?
Yeah.
But I really would like you to talk a little bit about Daisy Ridley
Sure.
playing Rey and having a woman at the center of this.
Yes.
Because it's not like Princess Leia wasn't at the center of it, and
True.
like she didn't have an arc that was happening. But we kind of go away from it. It's the guys dueling with lightsabers that we remember.
Yes.
And she does all of that.
Yeah, well, first of all, we lucked out in the biggest way casting Daisy in Force Awakens. And she, as much as I knew this was going to be a challenge for me, I knew it was going to be a huge challenge for her. And I never doubted that she, would be able to pull this off. But she's gone so far beyond what I thought even she could do in this. Not just physically and doing some extraordinary stuff that way, but emotionally. I mean, it is a very it's a big, rousing, fun adventure. But there's sort of the story you make and you sell and you're going to do, and then there's sort of the secret story that you're telling that really interests you. And there's this story that she, her arc, what she goes through, that really tested her. And there are things that she does in this film that I think are just truly remarkable. Like her performance in this movie is so good. She's so she's so open. She's so complex. She's much more mature. Like, I didn't think when we were doing Force Awakens, oh, she's like a baby, but now I do. I look back at some of that stuff, I'm like, oh my God, she was nearly unformed, as good as she was. She's matured and sort of arrived in a way in this movie. Adam Driver's extraordinary, Oscar Isaac, John Boyega, they're all great. But Daisy just blows me away.
Well, you bring up Adam Driver and Kylo Ren. Talk about family and who's your daddy. His parents are heroes.
Yes.
Han Solo and
Yes.
Princess Leia, and yet his spiritual father is Vader.
That's it.
No, I've always been looking for it. Daisy Ridley is a fantastic actress, and aside from my opinions and thoughts about the direction of the sequel trilogy and stuff, I think the scripts and the acting has just been phenomenal. And Daisy Ridley really does a great job at playing such an awesome character and awesome protagonist. And I do wish that we got a little more of her in The Last Jedi. I think it was a great movie for the advance of Kylo Ren's character as Ben Solo, and I got to connect with him a lot more. It's something I wasn't able to on the Force Awakens. So that's something I'm looking forward to seeing further advance in this film.
Yes.
So talk about
His grandfather.
complicated.
No, I think that it's look, the Skywalker saga is and has always been a family story, and
Yeah, but a really dysfunctional family.
yeah, but a family story. I mean, seriously,
Yeah, that's just the way it is.
yeah, but I do think that that complexity you talk about, that thing, the question of if the son of Han and Leia can be turned to the dark side, can't any of us? What is it to be the kid of these heroes, and we've all seen people who are children of certain people that go dark. The idea of being drawn to, attracted to this power, this purpose that you could never be the thing your parents were. What should I be? Turning against them. I think there's more of that in the real world than we might think, or might even be aware of. But I think
I think we're all aware of it. That's why
Well,
therapy is so popular.
that's it. That's true. But I feel like the story for Rey, her connection with Kylo Ren, that is really at the heart of the emotional story in this movie. And the things you're talking about are very much the things that the movie talks about.
Yeah. So Ben Solo and his relationship with Anakin Skywalker's past life as Darth Vader, who's all dead and gone now. It really resonates with his character, and it has since The Force Awakens, where he's just been inspired by this darkness that he is related to. I think he's very much aware of like where he comes from and all that. I still question whether or not he actually knows about the redemption of Anakin and the redemption of Darth Vader, but that's yet to be told, I guess, or discussed in the new film. It's really true though, exactly what he says. Like the offspring of people who can be so great can be the most rebellious people in the world as well. So if you look at the children of pastors or something like that, there's so much pressure on them to be such a great person or such a great kid, such a perfect child, and yet they're drawn to the same temptations and evil that everyone else is on the planet. And a lot of that is put in the spotlight because they have such a public figure and a public face, and it's it happens. So yeah, it's interesting. It's nice that he actually brings that up for the people who haven't been able to see the purpose of that character yet.
Is there a Bible somewhere? Whether George Lucas left behind something?
Well, I thought you meant the actual Bible.
No,
I was
they're
like,
not the
yeah,
act. Well, the
there are
Bible's
Bibles.
a lot in this movie. You know, they're all there.
That's sort of
Everything
true.
is.
That actually is true.
It's everywhere.
There was never, a Bible that I saw that from George from the beginning. No. There was never a Bible that we wrote from the beginning. When Larry Kazan and I started working on Force Awakens, we had a lot of ideas and things we wanted to do in Episode 7, in that film, that we just couldn't get to. We couldn't do the Luke training things with Rey. There just wasn't time to do all that. And so we knew it would happen subsequently. Even with George, showing to all of us that when you have the better idea, you change it. Which he's done again and again in these subsequent releases of the films. But Return of the Jedi was Revenge of the Jedi. I've got the poster, Revenge of the Jedi. And then he's like, nope, Return now.
Now it's Return.
And I think the lesson of, you have the idea you think you're going to pursue, and then you have the better idea, and you go, well, if there's time, let's do that. So in this story, I always knew when we were doing Episode 7, there were certain things that I felt for me, and I was never supposed to do this movie, I would need...
No, you weren't doing it.
Right. I would need to see at the end of this trilogy, at the end of these 9 films. And then when Kathy Kennedy called and said, will you come on, one of the attractions was, ooh, I get to actually do these things as opposed to just backseat. I wish.
Here you are in this trilogy doing the first part and the third part, the last part, while Rian Johnson comes in and does the middle part, and he kills off a few people. And
it's all the rage.
Snoke, everybody's got to kill somebody, or you haven't put your stamp.
You've got to kill some people.
They've got to go. I mean, I don't know. You might have wiped out everybody, in Rise
no
of
one
Skywalker.
survives.
No one survives. It's just you, and you come out and say,
"Oh my God,
it's my fault."
No, I would.
Yeah, text me.
I'd kill
if you
myself
have
too.
a problem,
exactly.
Here's the way it's going to be.
Here's Chris Terrio's email.
He would love that. I'm sure they would all love that. But
yeah, I think it's interesting. I wonder. It's always it's been a wonder to me. It's been a question that I've wanted to ask JJ at any point in time, if I ever get the chance. If he knew that he would be stepping in to do Episode 9 at the end of the day when Colin Trevorrow, left the door. It makes me wonder if he would have just chosen to do all 3, just to have that unified vision, because at least there would be a unified vision. What we've had so far has been a very ununified vision between multiple writers, multiple directors. So, it's come and gone, the pieces, Colin Trevorrow coming and going, and there's been a bit of drama with the whole construction of this trilogy, and it's very unlike what George Lucas would have done, which is plan everything out from the start.
Did you feel that when somebody else came in and did that middle section, that you had sort of lost the strings of?
Well, no, I mean, for a moment I felt like, oh, okay, because we had talked about doing Episode 8, but the truth was I was beginning to direct Episode 7. And there was quite a bit to think about, and I didn't have the brain power or or the approval of my family to commit to being away
too.
And it was just one of those things where all around it was not the right thing to say. At the beginning of Episode 7, let's talk about 8. When I was a kid growing up, whenever we would be in a meal, it would be lunch, and my mom would always say, okay, so for dinner, what do we want to do for? And we'd be like, Mom, we just start dinner, she was always talking about that. So it felt like that. I was just starting 7. It was like,
I don't care about
8.
tomorrow.
Kathy, I can't. How do I? And then when Rian came on and he started writing, and I was very interested to see what he was going to do, and we sat and had a meeting, and he obviously read the Force Awakens script, and then I read his script, and what I loved about it was its subversive nature. I loved that it was about shock. It was about surprise. It was about there was a sort of meta take on the Jedi. It was a very different approach than what I would have done, which is one of the reasons why it was fun to read. And I was and am a real fan of his as a director. So I just knew he was going to do something extraordinary with it. And, you know, I was immediately like, oh, jealous that he was doing the thing, because I just felt like, oh, it's so much fun that he gets to sort of continue the story with these characters. What I was ultimately, in my selfish, you know, myopia, I was thrilled that nothing was rendered undoable from all the things that happened in that movie. And in a weird way, where The Last Jedi ends, you know, it doesn't fundamentally shift the paradigm. And so I found myself feeling like, oh, well, that story could still happen, you know, and I kind of went about my way. And then X number of, you know, years later, Kathy called and said, do you want to come back and finish it?
It's very difficult in this whole franchise series to claim ownership.
Yeah, so it appears as if JJ is happy with the way things stand between Ryan and The Last Jedi and his two films that kind of bookend that film. But you know, here we really get to see the genuine appreciation for such a different movie than what he would have made. Because as a director, I mean, you know, he brought it up earlier when he was talking about the fans and the critical fans and stuff. As a director, we've obviously it's a form of art, and an artist is never, at the end of the day, always happy with the result that they end up putting out. And it's been very apparent with George Lucas going back and retouching up his works. He put so much passion and heart into Star Wars, and it really shows, because he kept going back and refining and refining and refining. And we had the special editions, we had the DVDs, the Blu-rays, so on and so forth. And it's not to mess with the fans. It's because he loves what he does. He loves what he did, and he wants to try and make it the best that he could. So yeah, we really get to see JJ's appreciation for someone else's take on the franchise, because that's, in the end of the day, what it's all about.
Oh,
Except for George Lucas, because he came up with the idea.
By the way, I would even argue it's beyond him. I would argue that Star Wars is not, it's bigger than all of us. I mean, even George, who of course is the only one who can really claim ownership, like you say, but even George, in a way, I would guess, has to admit that this thing, Star Wars is bigger than anyone and any of us. And I just think it's the fans thing. But of course, it's, you know, it's George's creation.
Well, you know, in Bob Iger's book, there's that thing he said, well, he was disappointed in The Force Awakens because it was too much like The New Hope. But to me, and I want to hear what you say about it, it's, you were introducing a new generation to the old generation.
Yes.
So the connection there is really strong to me, that I don't feel in the prequels.
But here's the thing, there are a number of things that we obviously intentionally did in a kind of history repeats itself mold, to say we are introducing this brand new cast of characters, this stormtrooper who runs from the First Order, this scavenger who is living literally in the wreckage of the history of the movies that we know, and this hotshot pilot, we don't know his history, but he's joined the Resistance, to find Leia years later sort of unable to give up the fight because she can smell smoke from miles away. Where's Han, you know, at this point? What is he up to? The fun of asking where are these existing characters and revisiting some of the themes, and in some cases some of the locations from the original story.
I don't really know what JJ's talking about here, where we've had revisiting locations, because so far I think that's one of the main complaints, is that we haven't had any familiar locations. We've had very similar environments. Jakku, very much like Tatooine. Starkiller Base, very much like Hoth. Although with the release of Jedi Fallen Order, it's apparent that it is actually Ilum. Which is fantastic, and round of applause for whoever is responsible for that decision, whether it be the story group or Respawn Entertainment or EA. I don't know who thought of the idea, but brilliant on their part connecting those dots. But yeah, no, talk with Donna again. All new locations. We haven't seen a single familiar location throughout the sequels. Than I think most people would have liked. A lot of people love Rogue One, and that does have a little cameo appearance of Coruscant and Mustafar, locations we truly have seen before. It would have been awesome to have that in The Force Awakens.
To me, was part of doing this thing as a continuum, which is to say, it's not just about going to new lands and meeting new characters. It's about embracing what what's come before, so that the characters that you meet in episode 7, imagine it chapter 7 of a book. It's not about having entirely brand new, rebooted. It's a continuation of the one story. So in that way, and look, is there a big, giant, planet-sized weapon in Force Awakens? Yes. And does it blow up? It does blow up. And so there are undeniable, parallels. But in a way, because there had not been a Star Wars movie in a long time, the prequels were the ones that had preceded it, I very purposely wanted to sort of revisit the old in order to start and tell the new. And that was the challenge. And again, for those who hate it, I could not respect your opinion more. And for those who love it, I question your sanity. But I just...
That's so sane, but that will save you years of therapy.
But I'm just...
It's funny to me that JJ is referring to the fans that hate The Force Awakens as people that he can sympathize with, because it really begs the question of whether or not he was a part of the fans that hated the prequels as well. So, for him to be able to sympathize, it does beg the question, like, okay, does he know how we feel because of the fact that he's felt this way before? I have no idea. So he has expressed his dislike for those films, but it makes me wonder if his dislike goes beyond how he described them to be as his lesser favorites.
It felt right to us at the time, and as does this one now.
Well, you just mentioned something, and I know I have to let you go soon, but the idea that there's a history. You work with a lot of the same people that you work with a lot, because you basically have an ease and trust with them to do it. It's fascinating to me that Kerry Russell is in this movie.
Yeah, she's great.
I don't know what she plays specifically.
Suppose a character named Zori Bliss.
Yeah, well, that explains everything.
See?
Yeah, so thank you for
You're
that.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But that
Are you
is
exhausted now? All that information?
I know. I don't need to know anything else now. But except that she was the star of Felicity.
She was.
Which was almost in the beginning for you when you were doing TV. Of course, you've done, millions of other things, including that little thing called Lost. Where we all have questions and we're doing it.
Yes.
But when you think back to those days where you're doing Felicity, which is the opposite of all of these movies that you do now, do you ever miss that, the simplicity of it?
Very much. It's funny. We have this show that we're producing for Apple called Little Voice that Sarah Bareilles and Jesse Nelson are doing, and it's a young woman in New York, and watching dailies for that show so puts me in the mindset, very nostalgically in a kind of wonderful way, of Felicity, because it's a romantic, sweet young person's show about people in the city, and it just is, I really do miss that because there was just something sort of wonderful and safe, and the group was so great, and I was doing it with Matt Reeves, one of my oldest friends, and the whole thing was just wonderful. But working with Kerry on this, it's funny. There's a scene.
I didn't actually know that J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves were old friends. Matt Reeves is currently working on the Batman movie for 2021, I believe, and he did do the later two films of the Apes trilogy. He did Dawn for the Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of the Apes. I always forget the super long titles there. I believe he also did something on Cloverfield. I think he was the director for that one. And so he goes back in the past with JJ and did some work with Felicity.
Between her character and Oscar's character, and in this one moment, she says to him, she's got a whole crazy outfit on and mask and everything, but at one point she looks at him and she just says, "Hey." Now every scene in Felicity started with "Hey," like literally. It wasn't like a written rule, but if you happen to just like literally turn on any episode of Felicity, switch to any, and someone walks in, it's like, "Hey," literally, it's like 40 times per episode they say it. But it was just hearing her say "Hey," I was like, oh, it like broke my heart, because it's exactly a Felicity thing. She's wonderful in the movie.
All right, people, see, you look for that "Hey" when you go in to do that.
And it's a good one, man.
What, is there a Kelvin?
It's funny you ask.
Kelvin being your grandfather's
My grandfather, yeah. There was Kelvin. We mentioned Kelvin in episode 7, so it felt like a hard thing to do again in this one. So we actually didn't overtly mention Kelvin in this movie.
I'm disappointed.
I am too. Now that you bring it up,
I think you should go back.
I should open the movie up again.
It's right. Just do it. Just tell them. You're changing
I'm
all
gonna
the
call Bob,
prints.
but you need one more week of reshoots.
One more to do that.
Can you imagine?
Okay, well, speaking of the internet, we're going to take a minute to have a couple of questions from them.
I'm sure they'd be really nice.
I'm hoping so. The hatred will come
What up
later.
with your hair,
That
Abrams?
will be, what up? Okay, J Noyola 98 says, is there going to be an epic kiss in this movie?
That's a great question.
That is great.
Jay Nola. This reminds me of a question I got from Jay Nola 96 once.
Really?
Which said, is there going to be an epic kiss in this? I will say, without saying kind of who it is, that you do not leave this movie without experiencing a kiss.
I don't think he's going to be following up the whole Rose and Finn romance that was hinted at the end of The Last Jedi. If you have read Resistance Reborn, it does point to, which is a canon novel, by the way. It takes place after Episode 8 and kind of leads into the road to the Rise of Skywalker. And in that book, it is established that Finn and Rose were a moment, and yet they are just friends. So I don't think you need to worry going into this movie. There's not going to be any Rose Finn action going on. It's probably safe to say that whatever this kiss happens, I don't know. I think maybe JJ will throw the fans a bone and give us the Raylo that has been going around the internet for a while now.
But that could mean all sorts of things. There might be more than one.
I don't know. I really think you've had CIA training.
Let's go next one.
Let's go. Let's see what it is. Okay, next one. Zago Rexla. Oh, I can't do that. What are your favorite fan theories? What have they ever came up with that you actually wish you might have done?
There was one that said that Jar Jar Binks was Darth Sidious or something, which I thought was like, I just thought that was that was fantastic. I thought that was good.
It would be great.
Let's just go with that one.
Well, this is the first time you've been here, so I wish you would come all the time.
This is the most I've ever had.
It would be great for you to come a year from now.
Anytime you want.
And we discuss everything.
Let's do that.
That it says, let's just do that.
I would love to.
Where everything, spoilers everywhere instead of spoiler
It'd be my favorite thing.
to do any of that.
Happy to.
But we always end in song.
Okay.
You are a musician.
Well, that's very
Well,
generous.
you are. You just wrote themes for all these TV shows. You've done it. But I'm going to ask you something, just as a personal favor to me. Can you hum the original John Williams Star Wars theme for us and take us out with that?
Da 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 da
Da, 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 da.
Come on.
My life is made. This
Yours.
is it. This is
Yours.
This
This is the most I've ever had.
Thank you. That was great.
Thank you.
All right, and that was the interview, and you can catch that on ABC News or on YouTube with the Popcorn channel. So yeah, we actually didn't have any time to cover the Chris Terrio article, but I really want to at some point. It's done by Rolling Stone, and it was a great it's called Inside the Writing of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. So if you do have a chance, check that out. Otherwise, I will try my best to cover it on the show at a later point in time, so stay tuned for that. Well, we had a great chat, just us today. Thank you for joining me in the Escape Pod, and for tuning in to the latest episode. We're on as many podcasting platforms as you can think of, as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Google Podcasts, whatever, Stitcher. The list goes on. So please share this with your friends. Tweet out an episode, whichever one was your favorite. Say, hey, check this out. Give us those ratings, those 5 stars. They really help boost up the show and make it visible to other people. And that is exactly what keeps this alive. So, be sure to send it along. And, the support is so greatly appreciated. And, if there's anything that you wanted to say that, we can address on the show at some point, you can tweet us at SW Escape Podcast. That's our Twitter handle, so look for us there. And also we have an email, theescapepod at outlook.com. That's theescapepod at outlook.com. So shoot us your questions, comments, or feedback. If there's something that you heard on the show that needs some correcting or whatever it is, we don't have fact checkers or anything. Pretty small show, so just send those through. Nothing really else to talk about other than the fact that we will see you this upcoming Wednesday is the Mandalorian Roundtable, so stay tuned for that, the night before the fan screening of the Rise of Skywalker. So yeah, thanks again for tuning in, and may the Force be with you.